Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Well, I'd like to welcome you all today. We are on Treaty 7 territory in Mohkinstsis, Blackfoot Confederation, where the two rivers meet, the Elbow and the Bow. And Treaty 7 was signed in 1877. That was the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is the Piikani south of the U.S.-Canadian border, the Blackfeet Nation. North of the border are the Piikani, the North Piikani, and Kainai and Siksika. 1877, Treaty 7 was signed, which brought in Tsuut'ina, the Dene, as well as the Stoney Nakoda. So, yeah, it's important to acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status and non-status as the keepers of Turtle Island, and all non-Indigenous people are treaty partners. And I thought it would be important to remind anybody who's listening, anybody who wants to participate, that we do have accountable spaces guidelines. Basically, first and foremost, we allow Indigenous the opportunity to hold space as a priority. We ask that settlers hold each other accountable in the accountable space guidelines, particularly in these book meetings. You can express your views thoughtfully, courteously, and respectfully without intimidation, discrimination, harassment in all communications with either spoken or written. And we do try to observe confidentiality when matters are deemed confidential. So as this is recorded, if you have listened to any in ones in the past, you'll notice sometimes there's a break. And that is out of respect of somebody maybe asking, can we please pause it? So we just ask that people realize their privilege, be aware of potential power dynamics that may exist within a space, share the space and time to talk, being mindful of not talking too much or too long or repeating oneself. Avoid making assumptions about other people. Being open to critical self-reflection. If an individual tells you that something you said was harmful, listen. Understand that we are all in a place of learning. If you said something problematic, apologize. Listen to the voices of others and then learn and adjust your behavior. And use your I language and speak for yourself. Do not speak for others. Do not share somebody else's stories or experiences. And notice that your own biases and judgments as they arise. And take care of yourself. Think of someone you trust whom you can debrief with and plan to contact them. It's okay if you need to leave at any time. I'm going to stop my share and go from there. And I just think I better get in the habit of doing that more. With the deepest respect to you both, you know all this and have, been doing that work. Maybe for folks listening to the podcast at a later time, that they'll realize that there is, that power dynamic that they don't know about. So, anyway, let's talk about the book because the book is so great. And I was hoping we might get a few more folks today, but I guess not, and that's okay. We're all meant to be here. It's the middle of a snap election. I know, the author, he's probably preparing notes and doing schoolwork and doing a million things right now that, he's quite busy, Niigaan Sinclair. And I'm sure everybody else is too. Even myself, I had to leave a campaign call in order to start the book club and, take a couple of sandwiches. Ah, it's just like that during campaign time, isn't it? Where you're trying to do too many things at once. And I'm not even a campaign manager or a candidate, so imagine. Anyway, okay, so Winnipeg, Visions of Canada from an Indigenous Center, Oh my God, I love this book so much. I didn't quite finish it. I was in section four. Had I not gone to the campaign office today, I think I would have finished it, but I thought I was doing someone a favor by showing up, and then the other person didn't show up. So it was like, wasted an hour. I could have finished this. I know it, but it is what it is. So I tried really hard over the weekend too to try to get lots of pages read, and I really loved it. And it was funny, one of the last stories that I did finish reading was the one about the Winnipeg Jets and their commitment to reconciliation. That's a lot quieter. And what was wild was I had turned on my socials and I had seen that there's a new article about Chris Simon. Chris Simon was an Indigenous hockey player here in Calgary. He got traded to other teams. I don't really care what they were. But at the end of the day, he had severe brain issues from trauma, um, and the family and many other former NHL players actually took the NHL to court about this, and the NHL still hasn't really put out a statement. There was a small settlement, and I say small because I think of multiple NHL players, and the settlement number, and, divide it between them. And Chris Simon actually had to apply for disability and was living on disability at the end of his life. He had to declare bankruptcy as well. And his family said the last like 3 years of his life, he wasn't really here, really struggling with pain, et cetera, et cetera. So it's interesting because I read the Winnipeg Jets section and I was like, that is so hopeful that maybe some of these sports teams are getting it. But then I just think it's because they obviously have actual Indigenous employees, and they retain them as opposed to a Calgary where it's like, shut the fuck up, squaw, you're gone, you're out of here. That's how I feel most places, let alone like have legitimate prior issues with employment. So, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine what it would be like to be an actual native hockey player, be suffering from that. And then he took his life from the pain and suffering that he was going through. So it's interesting because like I hear everybody talk about MAID and how it's wrong and it needs to change. And yet when I door knock, I remember door knocking for the provincial NDP. I remember coming across a house and she told a very long story about using the MAID system and how kind it was for her sister who was dying of cancer and how she was a huge proponent and supporter of it. So it's just amazing when you have somebody of upper class and lower class. Like this campaign, my campaign, I have never been more aware of socioeconomic background until this campaign. Um, Holy cow, we have some very, very, very privileged people who really look down on people running. And it's, I've never seen this wealth gap between like myself and others. And it's funny because I like to think I carry myself, in a good way. But when I come across people of upper class, wow, like no respect, no pleasing, no thank you, no um, understanding of other people's issues, no care. Like I was at the hospital on Friday with my father and my mother, I'm waiting for the hip surgery. And it is just shocking how many people expect so much of you, but never ask you the simple things like, hey, how's your family doing? How did the hospital visit go? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that. They live in a different world other than get this done, do this. Come on. How come you're not doing this? So I think of this book, I think of the NHL people, and I think about how they live in a different socioeconomic world than I do. So when I seen the number that they actual settle for, I just thought, poor Chris. He was probably very used to poverty just from his upbringing, but then to have to declare bankruptcy and live away from his family for the last little bit because he was so hard to like he was in so much pain. I can't imagine. And then at that time we wouldn't have had the maid. At that time we wouldn't have had that be an option for everybody. So, and I don't know if it would have been an option for him because it's ironic. When I talk to people on the door, it's barriers. You know, it needs to be better, it needs to be faster. But when I talk to people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, it's they don't want to find me housing, they want me to kill myself and show me made. So like it's just black and white different in Canada on this topic. And it just made me think of this book the entire time because it's just again, Indigenous people have been forced at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. And as a result, um, we just don't have the same options as everyone else. And, he even talked about Jordan's principal and that one family that had two kids that had that very rare disease and how hard it was for them to get those services and how the family had to, go to expensive hotels in in Winnipeg in order to get them care at the hospital. Um, I just don't think regular Canadians have any concept of the vast socioeconomic difference between us. And I even when we're right there to talk to, well, you're not the right elder. You're not, my elder. Okay. Where is your elder to smudge here? You know, and my offer not being good enough. It is shocking to me how many people believe that I'm not capable of smudging. It is shocking to me. Yeah. So like I reading this book, it was it was just through all of that, all I seen was the massive socioeconomic change, disparities between Canada and Indigenous people. And he talked about it over and over. And then he talked about all of these different protests that we've all attended, that we were all in support of, that we maybe issued statements on. And you know, I'll say this too, as a liberal, we have talked about many policies for Manitoba, specifically about the coal. I don't know how you call that First Nation that's kind of isolated and they needed the road, that special road. And then like Winnipeg itself with its algae issue and such. I wish this book was mandatory reading for all liberals in Manitoba before they, talk about policy. Um, I didn't even really come across things that were specific to minerals or pipelines really. And I just was like, I bet you he could write a whole book on the injustices there too. Just the water injustices was enough that he wrote about. Um, but I really enjoyed this book, and I have a lot of dog-eared pieces that I really wanted to talk to you. But like some made me laugh. Th- I guess this book I was expecting to be an academic book that was going to be difficult to read. And it wasn't at all. It was well written, well thought out, well put together, but absolutely in layman's terms. So everyone could read this book and hopefully have some empathy too. Like he really talked about anti-racism training and how that bias is still there. And it's just resonating with me because I mean, I've worked with another person for over a year, and it's still like there's no comprehension that we're a treaty partnership. It's still your community, your community. It's like, ugh, this community, this stolen land, but it's not going to resonate with this person. So, um, it's just very difficult and very difficult to read all of this, knowing it's validating to know that other people are going through it. Um, what I think I love the most too is that because he is an academic, he's a professor, a person of stature, he really is involved in a good way in a lot of initiatives happening in Winnipeg and on different boards. And, I really loved that he talked about the volunteerism that he did with the Mama Bear clan. And I remember the story about Jeff, him trying to find Jeff. And he said, Jeff, if you're reading this, please reach out. Um, He's just such a genuine person. And I mean, I've known that because I've met him a few times. And but at the same time, it just comes out so well in his book, you know? He just writes it so well. And one of the horrifying things, and he even said it's like a scary movie or something, but was that one piece about the residential school and the children that were buried there, but it was sold off and now it's like a trailer park, like one of the RV parks that you would, go camping at. And I'm just like, it is shocking to me. They talked about the monument that was there he grew up with, acknowledging these kids, but not really like they're still on top of graves. And then during the development for the RV, it was just, you know, brushed aside, like no care at all. So I really I didn't come across anything about the Human Rights Museum because I know there's very similar stories about that for building the Human Rights Museum. But I only got to section 4, so it might have touched on it later. I just didn't get there. Um, but hearing the story of his grandpa, the story of his grandpa who had gone through so much trauma, had gone through the war, and then later finding out one of his best buddies was Tommy Prince, and they used to, back each other in fights in the bar. Like there were stories in there that I think he really humanized everybody, and he even talked about, sexual abuse and child abuse and how hard it is to discuss because these are your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents. And it's like, God knows I know these things. And I've always tried to direct like the Reconciliation Action Group and settlers to be like, why would we focus on that? When in the bigger picture of all the racism, like that's happening because of systemic failures and racism. So why don't we focus on the systemic racism and policy failures? And so he touched on all of that really eloquently and said how hard it is for us to all talk about, and it is. And I really appreciated that. That's for sure. I did read the lady beard chief or bird chief part, the beer, and our very complicated relationship with alcohol. And I remember when that happened too, and the work that she had done, and I still don't feel good about it. And I don't blame her for doing the artwork or anything like that. Like it's just complicated. It's just and as a Indigenous artist, of course I want that for her, right? Like if someone's going to get the gig and someone's going to, be able to advocate for monies going to MMIW, like we were talking about that at the Reconciliation Action Group meeting yesterday, how hard we have to fight for money for Red Dress Day. And that's not including Valentine's Day. That's not including, Sisters in Spirit. So it's just, and any upcoming vigils that just happen organically. These things that happen. So yeah, this book, it went all over the place in some ways, but it really touched on a lot of themes that I thought were so important. I'm glad he talked about Colton Boushie. Glad he talked about Gerald Stanley. I'm glad he talked about the serial killers. I'm glad he talked about Tim, Tina Fontaine. Um, yeah, it was just a great book. And, talked a little bit about HBC and how, they just decided to make this monument. And I didn't know at the time it was one of the largest ones in the country at the time. So I learned so many little details that I would have never been exposed to if he hadn't written this book. And quite frankly, I wish everybody would write this book about every town all across North America. And I actually talked to my dad about, because I've struggled about if I wrote a book, what would it be? And I know what it would be because I'm a daughter of the Mayflower. And so we have to get that authenticated. So that means paying into two societies. There's 100 families, and we think we know which one we're part of because I did the lineage. So once we get that verified through that society, then we can join the Mayflower Society. And then I can show my family, my white side, where they were at what time and what was happening to the natives at the same time as it goes. And my dad was really supportive of that. So I think that's going to be a kind of my goal is that if I write a book, that's got to be it. And God, I hope I remember to talk about things that he remembered to talk about. That's for sure. I don't know if he has a journal that he just journals in, or if he just goes through his Facebook memories, because that's how it hits me. I don't know. So I really enjoyed the way he chronicled a lot of our activism as well, and it hit home. He didn't even talk about Cindy Gladue, so like I would have to do a bit of that here, just because it was so well. It's an Alberta story, and disgusting. So anyway, I think I'll talk about my dog years later, but I definitely want to hear from you both. Um, so yeah, I don't know which one of you want to go first.
Go for it, Kat.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Michelle. That I honor everything you said and really appreciate your perspective on this too. And I hope you do write a book someday. I would love to read it about your genealogy, and I think it's wonderful to juxtapose both
Mm-hmm.
sides of yourself, your Indigenous self and your white self, and show settlers that yes, this happened and this is happening. And I loved this book too. I was born in Winnipeg and on treaty on Niigaan's territory, and I really appreciated, as you did, Michelle, and Rosemary has also said that I learned so much about this place from its founding, from its initial history up until present day, and what's currently going on there. I agree. I wish every town and city had someone who could chronicle these stories in this way. Um, yeah, there was a lot of heartbreaking essays in there, of course. Being a journalist, I was hoping to ask Niigaan what his favorite thing to write about was. So maybe one day I'll find that out because he is incredible. He's got an incredible eye, an incredible way with words, and makes things so, as you said, Michelle, makes things so easy to understand, but also say it in such a beautiful and eloquent way as well. Everyone should read this book because Winnipeg is literally the center of the continent. And I found a lot of hope in the stories in the fourth part as well, because things seem to be shifting. And I don't know if that's because of their Indigenous premier or just because Winnipeggers have worked so hard on changing from being, quote, the most racist city in Canada to a city that actually believes that they are treaty partners and are working towards reconciliation. So yes, thank you. That's all I have to say for the moment.
Yeah, the word I want to use. I agree totally with what you both said and appreciate your comments. Um, I think the way he keeps track of things is that he writes these columns, right?
Yeah.
The book is a compilation of not all of it, but a lot of it of these columns. So he's an excellent commentator on what's going on right in front of people, right, as it happens, and providing that alternative perspective and lens. So I appreciate that. I only reached the beginning of part three, but the range of topics is incredible, and many and to see it all pulled together because we read a book about Tina Fontaine. We read a book that focused on incarceration. All these different topics, but somehow this is a wonderful reminder and a way to pull it all together. And I suspect that For example, if someone wrote a similar book about Calgary, that we would find, or and other cities, there would be so many overlaps and patterns and connections, right? You could just draw these parallels. Um, what I loved in the book is that he brought himself and his own family stories into it. You mentioned his grandfather, Michelle, but there were other examples of that all through. It really personalized everything. Um, I really liked how can I put it? Like nature as nature, natural features in human beings. There's no distinction. Everything is living. Everything has a spirit. Everything is connected. And I loved how he talked about how Manitoba, the spirit of what is Manitoba, existed long before anybody was there, right? It's in the land, it's in the waters, it's everything. Um, yeah, I felt that was really important. And the problem is I haven't had a chance to go back over my notes. I'm just trying to think of what else stood out for me. Um, well, just again, and talking about natural elements, he really emphasizes once again that Indigenous peoples have observed, right, the waters, the land, the Aurora Borealis, whatever it is, for centuries. And those observations are the basis, right? The scientific understandings of all of this and what's going on. So I think that was another really important point to make. I really regret he isn't here. I think I would have enjoyed listening to him. I didn't know if you had a video for us to watch, Michelle.
You know, I I was hope he even retweeted this book club. I want to say Saturday or something so that people would have time to,
Mm.
log in and be a part of it. So I think him just even doing that mattered. So it was him, it was CAD, it was the Reconciliation Action Group, and I don't think any other retweets, any like showing of it. But yeah, it was just such a great book. I wish everybody would read it just because I think it's important too that people, when I think of Maria Campbell's book on Half Breed, and I think about how she talked about basically every settlement in Canada first started out with an English side, a French side, and the half breeds were on the English side, and the Métis were on the French side. She talked about that in her book. And so, we don't discuss that as a part of the settlements all across the country. And they were all there. And then there's, a special place for the Chinese. I would call them slaves, but they were hired help for cheap labor to exploit of those times, and they weren't really allowed with anyone. So Chinatowns were always kind of their own separate little worlds as well. And so I really appreciated that he talked about this at all. And he did talk about slavery in this book as well. And I want you to feel free to chime in, especially if there's something you remembered or that as I'm talking about these things, you remember something you wanted to talk about. Um, and I should have said the first time when I was talking about his grandpa, like the amount of courage it took for Murray Sinclair at the hospital to talk to his father and say, you can't see your first grandson until you get sober. And it took him a year, but he got there. And
Mhm.
then Niigaan, of course, he doesn't remember any of that because you're just born, you're just a baby. And he's like, all I ever have is good memories of my grandfather because he would be in his apartment and his grandpa was partly deaf. And so they would like exchange notes and his grandpa would only do things to make him laugh and giggle, like grandpas should. So his only memories of him are of love. And only
Mhm.
later did he find out some of the history of it. And I just think like that's so incredible. And I'm so like it's kind of a full circle like healing. And he didn't even know. like what it took for his grandpa to be there in such good way. I love that about him. Um, oh, okay, so the first dog ear that I have, I actually dog eared more for my daughter, and it was on page 65, and it was him really discussing Two-Spirit. And it very specifically about the first settlers dealing with their first Two-Spirit, and then some of the, different names that they had in different languages as far as he knew to put into this book. And so I really loved that. I was actually going to read this to my daughter, not tonight, but at another time that made sense so that, just because I think, again, we've done such work at erasing, so it was
Mhm.
important to try to reteach that. So that I think is really important. Oh, the I dog-eared grandpa, this literally the story I just said. And all I knew was love from grandpa. Each day I spent with him, he showed me what kindness and peace and commitment to another person meant. He taught me how to he taught me how shiny toy cars and stuffed animals are nice, but time is all around a person to give to another. That and the occasional rolled cigarette. That was funny.
Mhm.
I try to live up to his gift every day. Grandpa's biggest war was to be on a Schnubik in a world that tried to silence him, but he won. And I just love the way he ends a lot of his stories. Then he talked about the floods of injustice, which, like, this is
Mhm.
what I mean, how all Canadians need to understand the stories of displacement and how their, carefree turning on the tap has affected so many other people as a result of, having that luxury. And I just don't think that people understand that enough. So to me, it's really incredible. Um, yeah, so the next one I had dog-eared was a lot further, and it actually did talk about that Brandon residential school, and the location of the burial ground of those students. And I just that really hit me because I've never understood since the moment I've learned all about the TRC and the missing children and unmarked burial grounds. Like, I'll never understand at all how we're here, and to have a whole new world of denialism and
Mhm.
perpetrators of that violence. Um, I you talked about that Karn. I talked about it, and then this story I dog-eared just because I think everyone should know that, especially if they live there, because it's just wrong. Oh, I didn't dog-ear this, but the next one is the cargo with all the kids being
Mm,
shipped in the planes to the
mhm,
residential schools, and
mhm,
how they couldn't find enough pilots and flight attendants to really discuss that. Um,
mhm,
and one of the things that I dog-eared the last page of it because he talked about the worst aviation disaster in Manitoba history was those 8 children going to residential schools, and he names them here, and he tells this story, but yet we don't honor these 8 kids the way we should with other tragedies. Like, we just had the Swift Current Bronco bus crash anniversary, and rightfully so. Every politician, honored that in some capacity. But every June 28th or June 24th, we should be acknowledging these kids now, right? And and it, making that something we acknowledge. So, for the Reconciliation Action Group, I was thinking that maybe we should put out something every June 24th to honor these 8 students, because, like, that's what reconciliation actually is acknowledging these tragedies of the past and honoring them the way they should have been honored the first time. Like, this for sure
mhm.
is a heritage minute at the minimum too, right? Like, that should be something of importance that all of the country should know about. And nobody will if we don't, which is wrong. I hate that. I really like that he touched on that most wanted section from the police because I feel that too. I hate that. Um, say the names. Oh, how he wrote this. I was going to ask him permission to basically read 179 from here on in anytime we do missing or murdered Indigenous women, girls, two-spirit, or exploited men. Because this page here, this is what I was taught. This is why, to me, it's important to say the names and why we put names on red ribbons because he just talks about their spirit and their journey and how they're here because they didn't have that proper 4-day ceremony. And so I'm actually going to message him and ask him. I'm sure he would say yes, but regardless, it's just so important. And I would, obviously say Niigaan Sinclair in his book. And then he lists so many women that were just in that Winnipeg area. So I just love the way he talked about that because I think he does honor everyone that he talks about. And for me, that's been the hardest part about writing a book where it's like, I want to honor these people, but I also know some of the family members wouldn't want me to write about it, so I can't. Um, but he does talk about changing the names at times in order to respect the family's privacy, and he still tells the story. So I appreciated that for sure. Um, Something that I was going to ask him was page 213. It started on um, page 211. It's that story where there was going to be they were worried about kids showing up at the schools, so they like shut down all the schools, said nobody's going. And then when they reopened it, they had like the Bear Clan singing and welcoming them back. And I really loved the way they continued on, but they had so many of their community members show up. But something that was in there that I thought, well, this would never happen in Calgary was it said they worked with the Selkirk community as a whole, including the school board, to arrange for that. And I just thought the Calgary Board of Education, they worship genocide folks like John A. MacDonald. Like they are nowhere near this where we could even consider having this. And I was going to ask him, do they have cops in all of your Winnipeg schools too? Because like I'm pretty sure that's a pretty unique Calgary thing and it shouldn't be. And I know that the rest of the country is like, drooling to have that all across the country, the conservatives, and it gets done here because genuinely we're all conservative and don't speak out against things like this, right? So anyway, I thought this was a really beautiful story about how to deal with violence in a school rather than, oh, we need to up the city budget and put more cops in these schools, just like presidential school. Tried to like channel my inner whiteness there, folks. Jeez, no, not even a laugh. Just kidding, just kidding. Go ahead, go ahead. Just
I
chime
just
in.
wanted I just wanted to build on what you were saying about his relationship with his grandfather.
Yeah.
His grandfather showing so much love and kindness, and that really, and that he tries to demonstrate that. And I think that theme really came through strongly when he talked about the Mama Bear clan and their relationship with people on the street. It's that what's the word? Unconditional love, right? And then that you support people as much as you can. And and then also in that whole chapter about people on the street, he talks so much about the importance of the encampments as providing community and mutual support. And that every time a camp is moved, people are all over the place. They can't access services. It just takes so long to, right, get settled again with that. But also I was remembering from his book. I loved when he talked about the forks and he talked about I've got to get this straight, the Cree coming from the north and the Anishinaabe coming, I think, from the east, and then oh, I'm forgetting the Nakota coming from the west. I probably have it a bit mixed up, but just to take us back to that point in time with people coming together and what that meant. And he references over and over again the trade that went on. And I forget about that there were these incredible, forget about Europeans, long before Europeans, incredible trade networks all over North America. And we don't look at that. The other thing I learned that just blew me away, when I think of agricultural practices among Indigenous peoples, I always think East Coast, right? I think Five Nations, et cetera, or further south. I don't think of it as happening among Indigenous peoples on the prairies, but they've done all that work to show that I don't know how many, a long time ago, people were practicing agriculture here, and how that those practices form the basis, right, of agriculture today in Manitoba. And people don't know. They don't think about it. So I just wanted to share those things.
I always think about I remember hearing the stories more locally here from Blackfoot. They would like plant gardens and they would plant multiple of them. And I always thought, it's funny in the city, people don't want you putting out a spirit plate or your compost or that because they want skunks or raccoons or whatever. And it's like the opposite where it's like they knew like if you're traveling, you're going to need gardens. But conversely, if you're not going to be there, the animals will eat it as they should, and it will still continue, right? Like it's a whole ecosystem and cycle of understanding that we just, as Canadian settlers, like they've just ruined it all. And what he was talking about with like Winnipeg, where all of these like all the whole North America feeder system goes there, and all of these horrible chemicals are in the water now. Um, and settlers don't get it. Like they don't even try to understand. Where it's like, how is it a whole group of people were here, like millions of people, for thousands of years, and in the shortest, what, 4 centuries, you've completely fucked this water, like ruined the resources, ruined how many animals. Like it's disgusting, and they don't see themselves as the savages. That's the irony to me, right? It's always telling on yourself when you project, right?
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
mean,
So,
that's part of truth and reconciliation, right? We still haven't learned the truth, or we've learned it, but we haven't internalized it. We haven't accepted it. And that's what we need to do.
oh,
Is just remember, y'all were here first.
yeah, I know. It's so funny because I was on one of the socials and somebody was like, "So, what makes you want to move to Calgary?" And I like went to quote it and I was like, "Settler colonialism." And the person obviously took it all the wrong way. So, we obviously blocked each other, but it should be funny. It should be a Canadian joke. It should be indigenously funny, but it's not because, we're
So
not there.
sensitive.
We're like you said, it's not internalized truth yet.
And it's defensiveness too. White supremacist defensiveness about, oh my God, you want us to leave. You're attacking us. And it's like, if you read the treaties and became an actual treaty partner, you would know we are talking about sharing the land and sharing resources and sharing lives.
Ay, ay, ay.
Just do it.
Right?
Oh, his analogy of the house and the bathroom being
Yeah.
shoved into the bathroom, that was
Yeah.
brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the bike, the
Yeah.
stolen bike.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Like
exactly.
so good to talk about reconciliation in those two prime examples. That's what I mean about him being such a great writer that really resonates, I think, with the common folk, but also he's a brilliant academic and professor and can, do legitimate policy in the highest levels. So, he's just a gem. I was joking in my last podcast that it was like a fangirl because I kept bringing him up in such a good way over and over.
Yeah, I heard.
So I think I'm Niigaan's fangirl, but I'm not weird about it. I'm going to share this with you guys. I actually, I want to give a shout out to WordFest here in Calgary because they always bring in these fantastic authors, always, right? So by chance, the day I bought this, it was on my to-do list. I had to buy it, but I knew he was coming. I knew WordFest, and I got him to sign it. He said, Michelle McWitch, for your work, enjoy the stories of Winnipeg. And it says Niigaan. But because he was sitting at a table with two other people, I had them sign it too. So it's also signed by David Robertson. So Dave was here. He was here too. And that's Patty Buchan. Oh, I can't remember how to say her name, but she was the one that did that circle graphic novel. Oh my God, this had to have been like our first year of chapters and chat, so like 2016. And then she became a senator and she was there and she was sitting, so I got her to sign it too. So it's one of my like favorite books for a billion reasons, let alone that. And always grateful that because, like, how would I have ever met Stephen Graham Jones if it wasn't for WordFest bringing him up, right? Or bringing Niigaan over to Calgary so that we could have him and David Robertson all in the same room. Like, how great is that? So, I don't
I
know.
totally regret not buying the book at the time and getting them to sign it as well.
Ah,
But I'm so grateful to have read it, and I'm really looking forward to Murray Sinclair's book too, which is your next selection.
it is who we are. So I'm glad you brought that up so that I don't mess that up. And I sometimes think I should have said that in the podcast, and I bet I didn't. Silly munchkin. Yeah, I didn't anticipate getting this read even because once the snap election was called, I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this book? And then once I started reading it, like I just can't start a book and then put it down. Like I just can't do that. Um, so I just started reading it this weekend and devoured it in the free time I had between, dogs and my daughter and my husband. And I had a sacred fire. And that was the wildest snowstorm that happened at the same time. I can't explain that, but um, just a busy, busy weekend with campaigning too. So I was pretty happy that I got as far into it as I did and loved it. And I hope you both did too. And yeah, is there
100%.
any, yeah, I mean, we could try to find um, something of him because he gives so many lectures all the time. And he's speaking all the time about a million things because he is such a great. Oh, you know what you guys might really like of him? Um, okay, so there is this APTN piece that he does all the time where he talks about politics.
Mm.
Let me see if I can find that in the quick Google I just did. Videos. I'll bet you it'll be. Oh, what the heck? So the first thing that came up was Dr. Sinclair, professor at the University of Manitoba, shares 7 reflections on the Justin Trudeau legacy, focusing on this was in November, an evening with Niigaan. I'll bet you that was done. Oh, that was at Saskatoon. Then APTN talks about this book here. Let's see. It's only 6 minutes, so um, I'm going to cue it up, and then we'll share sound and listen to this because it's going to be great. Share.
May I say that I was able to attend the U of C social work presentation that Niigaan gave? Well, he pre-recorded it because he wasn't able to be at the meeting. So he said, if anybody was there, let me know. And I want to say I was there and heard his talk. And he talked a lot about love, which was really beautiful.
Isn't he's just a wonderful human being?
Yes.
Tell me if this is problematic. Oh, I can't hear it either. Just a second.
About Wînipêk, Visions of Canada. Niigaan, thank you for talking to us today and fitting us in your busy schedule.
Can you hear that, Rosemary? Okay.
Yeah, Miigwech, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us about Wînipêk, Visions of Canada from an Indigenous Center, and how it came to be?
So the word Wînipêk is, people might think it refers to the city, and we actually talk a lot about the city because it's in the center of a watershed, which eventually becomes Winnipeg, which is the lake. Cree people named the lake Wînipêk because of the algae in there, and the fact that everything flows into that lake, like going all the way to Alberta, Saskatchewan, northwestern Ontario, into the United States, even into the Northwest Territories. And so we have everything ends up in Manitoba and becomes Wînipêk, that algae in the water. So it's about the ecology, it's about the land, it's also about all the humans and all the things that we bring to the table, the good, the bad, the great, the ugly. And really that's what Wînipêk is all about, the life in this place, all of those things, and really what makes complexity in the center of Turtle Island.
Yeah, here's the book right here. It looks great. I'm sure all of us are really excited for it. Winnipeg has been called ground zero for some awful things like the MMIWG crisis, but you also say it is ground zero for Canada's future. Can you talk about that?
So a number of years ago, a national magazine came to Manitoba, Winnipeg, and called us the most racist city in the country. That's not true. We've inherited the most amount of racism, perhaps here. I would actually say the North as well. But because of the proportional population, the fact that 1/5 of us here in Winnipeg are Indigenous, that means that we see Canada's racism. We see the impacts of the Indian Act. We see the impact of residential schools, and that turns into murder, missing Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit peoples, over-incarceration, the massive amount of Indigenous children in the child welfare system. But what happens is that because we are the first step of Canada's Confederation, the first province, the first treaty, the dispossession of the Métis, the imposition of the Indian Act. So we've been at this the longest of what Canada's violent policies have created. So therefore we've come up with the most amount of solutions at the same time. That's why you see neighborhood patrols. That's why you see youth who come out and vote and also go and redecorate and re-edit the statues in front of the Manitoba legislature. You see people who are dedicated Canadians, Indigenous peoples, working together, living together, and even marrying each other. And that's what you see in this place, and that's what the book's about.
So much history here in Winnipeg that it's pretty much ground zero. I've heard the Premier call it Nietzsche Central here as well. We in the media see a lot of the ugly things, but what is giving you hope for the future?
The book really talks a lot about conflict. Like for instance, a lot of people might know that Manitoba's economy was built on the slave trade of African Americans in the colonies way down that originally funded the Hudson Bay Company that brought the fur trade here. People might not know that Winnipeg used to be an Indigenous city called Nestawea of 14,000 people, and then people might not know about all the different histories that come and coalesce in this place. Really, what the purpose of what this book is intended to do is to try to get us to think about what does it mean to live here, what does it mean to experience life here, and then what does the future of Canada look like, because Indigenous peoples are growing the fastest, and most of them are between the ages of 15 and 35. 20,000 of them came out to vote in the last provincial election, and that election was only determined by about 25,000 votes over about 12 ridings. I wonder who those people who made that impact was, and I wonder who came out of that election as the victor. That shows you what the future of Canada will look like all across this country, because Indigenous young people are growing everywhere. And yes, in places like Ontario, they may be 1 in 11, 1 in 10, but they will eventually become 1 in 7, 1 in 6. As we become 1 in 3, the North is already 1 in 2. And that means that Indigenous peoples are going to be a tremendous force in Canada's future, and we can see it right happening in Winnipeg. It's almost like a prophecy.
Lots of great points to make in this book. What do you hope people take away from this book?
Hope. And I hope that what people see is that we have to have hard conversations, and this book is all about hard conversations. Talks about seniors neglected in a downtown Winnipeg,
Right.
Seniors complex. It talks about what is it like to see encampments pop up in this city. It also talks about the tremendous challenge around fires. We have a huge issue around fires in impacting disproportionately Indigenous peoples. But it also talks about the No Way Odena project, multi-billion-dollar investment. It's talking about the fact that Indigenous peoples are entering beauty pageants, and it's talking about mermen in the north who are dealing with the suicide crisis in their community, and instead of putting their hands up in the air and doing nothing about it, they went out, put on merman tails, and tried to make their community laugh a bit. That's what it means to be a part of Winnipeg, and that's what it means to be a part of Indigenous life, the center of life, not just in Winnipeg, but I think the entire country.
Lots of great stories, and you know, I've been following your work a lot, but finally, where can people pick this book up?
They can contact the publisher, that's McClellan and Stewart. They can go to independent bookstores like McNally Robinson in places like Winnipeg or Saskatoon. You can also order from them online. I encourage everybody to go out to independent bookstores, but you can also go online to the really big platforms and order it from there as well.
Niigaan, thank you for talking to us today about your brand new
book.
He's so great.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, no, there's some great videos of him. It's really hard to like choose one.
Mm-hmm.
Only every one I'm looking at's about an hour. So that's probably not going to work, but I thought that was a really good one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just love him. Here's one for next month. It's Who We Are, inspired by the words and wisdom of Murray Sinclair. And who is it? But it's actually Niigaan and Tanya Talaga talking about it.
Oh,
It's an hour and 20. Yeah, you know what? I'll send that to you, that link to you right now, so that way I'm
Hello,
just gonna
everyone.
pause this.
Thank you very much.
That'd be amazing.
Because yeah, no, these two powerhouses and then together on the same stage, like my God, how lucky are we? So I'm sorry, I probably should stop sharing, but at the same time, I'm like, I just want to do it before I forget. Rosemary and Kat, awesome.
Oh, can you not? Oh, I mean,
What's that?
edit this out of the recording, our email addresses.
I don't think anyone's gonna see that,
Okay,
but at least now it's done.
thank you.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm gonna just mess up my recording here by doing this so that Darcy knows. How do I do this? I guess an hour in to make sure we've edited out any. Damn. Subject video link for Who We Are. There. So hopefully we'll be able to read the book, but you know, maybe we'll be able to watch that as well. So
Yeah, we could watch the video ahead of time.
yeah, exactly. Right on.
I'm sure it's not the worst thing in the world if someone gets our email addresses either. It's like,
I don't think so, Kat. Honestly, I don't know how many people really watch or listen. I get zero feedback. And my next podcast I'm going to record is actually all the hate reviews I have. So I think it's going to be kind of funny, actually, in some ways. But, you know, I've said to you folks, if we don't put positive reviews, they don't get positive reviews. They get all of those, you know, paid bots to give bad reviews. And that's so common, right? So
that's really unfortunate. And I'm a bit sad that not more folks came tonight.
I am too, but I just know like there's so much happening right now with it being the middle of April. Next weekend is Easter. And I also know like white fragility is a real issue. At the end of the day, people don't want to focus on racism. They don't want to focus on reconciliation. They want those Indians to do a little dance and sing a song, and then they feel like, oh my God, I'm so reconciled. The spirit of the buffalo in me. So that's just the average Canadian. What do you do?
Yeah, keep trying. Keep trying to make them see that you are human beings and worthy of every right that we have.
I really like the way Niigaan talked about the landfill issue. And, for the first time, it seemed like there might be enough people who have an ounce of humanity in them. It was really ugly leading up to that. And I would absolutely expect to hear those awful quotes coming from the different orders of government here as well, if we were to really push them on Joey English. Um, I just know until we have a national strategy to search landfills for people, it's not going to change because the governments will change, right? Like I I suspect if the polls are right, we're going to have a major liberal landslide.
Fingers crossed.
But for what?
Yeah.
Like, are they talking about reconciliation? Have you heard that word, like, coming
Not
from them at all? In the NDP, like, it sounds like they might even lose party status. They're gonna lose that bad. Um, I put out a public post on all of my socials encouraging people to vote at least Blake Desjardins in because he's the second. Right now it would go blue. There's a huge amount of liberals that if they did vote for orange this one time, he would get in. Um, but I, I don't have faith. I don't have faith people will do strategic voting. Like I have heard so many staunch NDPers say they won't. So it just is what it is. And I would say the ones that are quiet, that are going to be voting strategically, they weren't really NDPers, right? They were just, I think everyone's just so afraid of Trump and so afraid that Pierre Poilievre is a mini Trump that they're willing to vote in Mark Carney. And I mean, by all intents and purposes, he's a conservative. The only thing liberal about him is that he's, not a right-wing Nazi like the Conservative Party we see today.
yeah.
It shouldn't be um, a conversation to talk about women's health issues or 2S LGBTQ health issues. But in today's day and age, it's a controversy.
Mhm.
It's incredible to me. So that somebody like Mark Carney, who's not going to attack basic fundamental human rights, is somehow a liberal. Like, I don't know. It's like I made the point yesterday it's like fascism light
Mm.
because I just haven't heard anything about it. Um, there's some conversations that are happening internally in the Indigenous Peoples Commission, but that it's not public.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I pray that it will be public soon before the election to swing some Indigenous voters back to the Liberals. But right now, I know they're pretty staunch for NDP. And to get Indigenous people to vote at all, like, I don't want to throw away a vote.
Mm.
So,
I find it interesting that now the Liberals want to promote voting on reserves and bringing that opportunity to them, thinking, maybe they'll vote Liberal and vote us in.
well, I
They're
don't know
just
if it's that. Like, we've been fighting for Indigenous people to have polling stations in general. And this, like, the Liberal government was the first one to be willing to be like, hey, that does seem kind of discriminatory. We don't. So they invested some time and energy into that. And Elections Canada put a lot of time and energy into Indigenous candidates now. But I mean, that has only been in the last 10 years because of the Liberal Party. It's not I hope they vote Liberal. It's literally, it should be a basic right to have a poll station close to your community. And that just hasn't been the case up until the Trudeau government. because it's not a priority, much like clean drinking water or, other basic human rights that Indigenous people should have. And I mean, I would say we didn't invest enough, but we were the first government to invest at all,
Yeah,
right? So,
absolutely.
and I do wish, like, I've tried to talk to the team about, explaining black and white difference between Trudeau to Harper, but I just, I think it's one of those things that I would have to write a book about it and talk about it because cynical Canadians don't see it. They don't see the amount of effort we put towards the Indigenous community over the last 10 years. They just see the failings and not the work that we did. So, and at the same time, writing that book would be stupid in the sense that it's like, ooh, you acknowledge people exist. It's not like we did the massive infrastructure investment that you should have done with like the National Indigenous Economic Strategy. That wasn't done. That was only like published in what 2022. But I mean, that's the kind of numbers that should have been invested that weren't. It's not that what we didn't do didn't matter. It did. It changed lives, but absolutely should have been 10 times more, you know.
Like you said, at least the Liberals tried. They made public
Well,
statements saying
Justin
it.
Trudeau did, and I'm going to start caveat like saying that because I don't know. Like I've heard some rumblings. No, he's a nice guy for reconciliation and he cares about us. And I'm like, cool beans, cool beans. How come we haven't like seen what that policy looks like? Now I know what the rumblings are behind the scenes, so I'm praying that's coming out soon, but we'll see. We shall see. I've been promised many things before. Consider it my intergenerational eye roll.
I've got to go, guys.
Okay, take care, Rosemary.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you
Bye.
take care. Bye. Bye, Kat.